So right now I'm installing updates on Windows XP. Long story short, it's all on this really cool Dell Optiplex 380 and everything is on this awesome 2003 desk setup. So not only does it look really cool, but it's also been working out really well because a 2010 computer with Windows XP runs really well. However, in the meantime though, because we have a lot of updates here, I figured why not talk about something else because I've installed over 300 updates at this point and it's still not complete. So I got my iPhone 6 here to record in high definition 1080p, and as I start to look around to see what else we can talk about, whether it be the Macintosh, Mac Pro, G5, or even Windows 10, I see this. Now to be fair, the user account on this XP machine is Steve approved, and I think it's because we have 3 Windows machines here and we have 3 Macintosh systems here, so I guess there's just supposed to be more Macintoshes than computers in terms of Windows machines. Is this real, or is this just the result of too many Windows updates? Now I know the G5 is real, and that's still here. I know the Mac Pro is real, and that's still here. No way. Well, I guess Steve wants to have more Macintoshes here compared to Windows machines. Dude! It's not Dell. It's a Power Mac. I say that as we have a G5 and a Mac Pro in the background, but it's a Power Mac. Honestly, I still can't believe that this is here because it's a Power Mac G4. And I had no idea how to start off today's video, so hopefully the Windows update was a funny way to start this off because it's PowerPC power. The oldest macOS I could run up until now was 10.3 Panther because on the G5, unless you have the really early edition from 2003, you can only run all the way back to 10.3 Panther. So this can run 10.2, 10.1, 10.0, macOS 9, maybe even macOS 8. Now that is just insane. Of course, there is the classic environment on the newer versions of, well, 10.3 and 10.4, but this is the real deal. The G5 redesign with the aluminum housing and of course later with the Mac Pro is still a classic timeless design. But this is timeless in its own way because despite being older than the G5, it still looks super awesome and super futuristic. The Power Mac G4 is literally skeuomorphic design in real life. It looks awesome the way it is right now, but as you can see, it really does need to be cleaned up, and I'm sure it's going to look a million times better once we're done with that. Instead of having windows, what we have here is a door. So we just open this thing right here, and there it is. And of course, this computer is Steve approved because it's a PowerPC Macintosh. Hey smokers, knockoff Jiraga1 here to tell you that we don't have a hard drive. I also don't have any spare IDE drives, and I don't have any IDE to SATA adapters. But what we do have is FireWire. We even have it on the motherboard itself within the system. FireWire is of course the best standard on these Steve approved systems, and I use it all the time. It doesn't matter if it's old, obsolete, and at this point not within macOS anymore, but that doesn't affect me because we use Steve approved software and hardware all the time. So apart from the fact that we have no hard drive and clearly a lot of dust, what else do we have inside the Power Mac? Well, I can also see that we do not have an airport card, which is not a big deal, but it would be really cool to try out wireless functionality, especially with something like macOS 9 or even macOS 8. We have an awesome PowerPC CPU, and of course, we even have not one, but 2 sticks of RAM here. Now we'll take a look at the closer specifications once we get everything cleaned up, but what's also really exciting to see is that all 4 of the expansion slots have a card. So this is really cool, and I can't wait to see what exactly we have, because it seems like we have not 1, but 2 GPUs. It's also really cool to see that we have not one, but 2 different drives installed on the front. And it's not just 2 standard optical drives. One of them is a standard drive, but the other one is a zip drive. The optical drive on the front is not only beige, but it also supports DVDs. And right below the optical drive, you can see that this is actually a zip drive because of the zip logo. Now this is completely different compared to standard floppies because a typical floppy can hold 1.44 megabytes. A standard zip disk can hold 100 megabytes. So as you can imagine, especially for back then, this was a great tool to have because one zip disk equals a ton of floppies. It is just super awesome to see this and everything because it's a Power Mac G4. But first things first, let's deal with that dust because it's really visible on camera, and yeah, this really needs a good cleaning because even the handles themselves have a lot of dust within them. What's nice about older hardware like this is that you don't have to upgrade this with modern RAM because it's a computer from the year 2000. So you don't have to find RAM which has basically become unobtainable to find because it's an ancient computer. Now this unfortunately has its own downsides because a lot of cool systems like this have been recycled because apparently they've become obsolete. If I can easily use a G5 or a Mac Pro from 2006 without a problem, it's not obsolete for me. Now, of course, you know, modern versions of macOS, modern versions of Windows, they require newer hardware, and there have been really cool improvements in the technology, but even just the case design of the Power Mac is still fantastic to see. Like, how could you recycle something as cool as this? So it looks like we have 2 different types of RAM sticks here. The first one is actually IBM branded, and this is 512 megabytes. So already that's off to a great start because half a gigabyte of RAM with a system like this is really cool to see. And specifically, it's PC133 RAM. This even specifies that it's 3.3 volts. And as for the second stick of RAM, it's also 512 megabytes. So we have a total of 1 gigabyte inside this Power Mac. Now that is really cool to see. The other cool thing about the G4 systems and earlier systems is that you can actually upgrade the CPU. Now, you can technically upgrade it with the G5, but it's a completely different machine, and it's nowhere near as easy as you see right here because, well, half of the G5 is just to cool the G5 chips. This, however, had third-party support from companies such as Sonnet Technologies, where you can easily install faster G4 CPUs and really max out your Power Mac. Based on just the RAM alone, it's pretty clear to see that this system has been upgraded before, which is awesome, and that's kind of the whole point of the Power Mac lineup because it's extremely easy to open up. Now, it's pretty common with Apple products to have different revisions of the same case design, and this Power Mac is no exception. After the G3 blue and white design, when this one was introduced, it was initially offered with PCI graphics. Now this card alone probably tells you that this is not the PCI graphics model. Afterwards we had AGP, and that's exactly what you see here. After the AGP graphics revision, there was a gigabit revision where it obviously adds gigabit Ethernet, and finally before the Quicksilver revision, where they completely changed the exterior of the case, there was a digital audio revision which was the final revision for this case design. I still can't believe this has 2 GPUs. So first, let's start off with the AGP graphics card. And as we can see, some prehistoric amounts of dust here. ATI Technologies, copyright 1999. This card has both VGA and DVI. So with the design of the video output side of things as well as the GPU itself, it does appear to be the factory Apple card, but we'll just need to double check this once we get the Power Mac up and running. It's going to be really interesting to see how macOS works with both of these GPUs, especially considering one of them's AGP and the second one here is PCI. If you think about it, this is basically a 2013 Mac Pro with dual GPUs. So here we have a very awesome ATI logo with the Radeon graphics right underneath it. And this one does also have DVI with VGA just like the other one. Well, we have the added benefit of S-Video. So considering this GPU says copyright 2001, I guess it's safe to say that this one is going to be newer and probably better. But again, I really don't know much about these specific GPUs, so we're just going to have to try them out and see how well they work. Next up, we have a smaller PCI card. So it's obviously not a GPU, but it's an Ethernet card. And this one is a D-Link Ethernet card. Now, considering this is the AGP model of the PowerMac G4, this might bring us up to gigabit speeds for Ethernet. Now, I don't know anything about this specific card, so we're just going to have to double check this. But even if it isn't a gigabit card, it's still nice to have an extra Ethernet port. And finally, the last card here is actually a blue PCB, and this is probably one of the best cards to ever exist. It's a FireWire card. So it's a Belkin card, and as you can see, it gives us 3 extra FireWire 400 ports. Now, there is no extra internal port, but that's not a big deal with this model because, as we saw earlier, we have one on board, so it's really cool to see extra FireWire within the Mac. Also worth pointing out that we do have a modem installed. And as for the PRAM battery, don't worry because we don't have one. Not only do we have layers of dust here, and on top of the optical drive, but we also have piles of dust everywhere. And honestly, that's actually kind of impressive because on a system like the G5, it makes sense because the entire thing is airflow. But this has a completely different arrangement. So this system probably hasn't been cleaned in maybe even decades at this point. I don't know. So just to see how bad this really is, well, you can draw with the dust. So yeah, that's pretty bad. Now this is the type of dust that you earn. I never knew that this case design actually has airflow where the drives are. That's pretty cool to see. They did not have to make it this awesome, but they did, and it really enhances the design of the G4. I don't even know what to say. This is just... Honestly, I still can't believe that we have a PowerMac G4 in front of us. It cleaned up really nicely, and the acrylic itself is still in really good condition considering, this system is older than the G5. With the front bezel off, it also gives us a good view at the optical drive, which is a nice beige CD-ROM drive, DVD-ROM drive, and it also has a volume control as well as a headphone jack on the front. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this will work under macOS, but it is physically there. What's also really cool about the zip drive is that it's translucent. So I'm guessing this is because you can actually see the door even when the bezel is installed. It just keeps that nice clean appearance. When I started to focus more on the acrylics, initially I was just going to leave the handles in place, but then I realized that there's a lot of dirt and debris within the handle itself, especially this inaccessible area, so I figured, why not just remove them? There's only 2 screws holding them in place, and as you can see, it was very worth it because now you can actually see through the handle because it's clear acrylic. It was definitely worth the extra time and effort to clean this up because, what do you know, it's transparent now. It reminds me of when we cleaned up the cinema display because it also has an acrylic translucent housing, and once we cleaned it up, it really made it look a million times better. If you take a close detailed look at all the plastics on the system, you'll see that there are some scuffs and scratches, but honestly, it's still in really good condition considering the age of the system, and I'd much rather have this over broken plastics. And to be fair, this is where you open up the system, so chances are you're going to have some scratches on this unless you took precautions to keep the plastic in good shape. The other side panel is a similar situation, but again, I'd rather have this compared to a broken panel. It's always really cool to check out the factory specification sticker because it tells us everything that we need to know about our PowerMac. So from what I can tell, and obviously from the fact that it has an AGP graphics slot, it seems like this is the AGP revision of the G4. Now, if that's the case, it means that we don't have onboard gigabit Ethernet, but it's a PowerMac G4, and honestly, even the fact that it has Ethernet in the first place is still a nice addition. Plus, we also had that network card, so maybe that's actually gigabit compatible, and if that's the case, then that doesn't matter at all. That's the nice part about these Power Macs. You can actually upgrade them. Even though this Power Mac was not exactly top of the line, it was still pretty much up there because it has a 450 MHz G4 CPU with 1 megabyte of cache. It initially shipped out with 128 megabytes of SD RAM, as well as a 20 gigabyte hard drive. Obviously, we don't have the original hard drive anymore, but we do have 1 gigabyte of RAM. The DVD-ROM drive, zip drive, and the 56K modem were all options on this model, so it's also nice to see that those were initially shipped out from the factory and not later upgraded. So for rear I/O on the G4, we have 2 easily accessible FireWire 400 ports, but if you include the internal one, you have a total of 3. Always awesome to have more FireWire because, well, it is the best standard after all. Below that, we have Ethernet as well as 2 USB ports, a microphone input as well as a speaker output, and of course, the 56K modem. It's also really cool to see that with this power supply, alongside the power input, you also have the option of a power output. Now what this does is it basically has a pass-through connection, so that way you can apply power to a monitor or potentially even other device, and instead of plugging in 2 items separately, you just have to plug in the Power Mac and the other device will receive power through this. In a way, it's kind of like an early version of ADC, Apple Display Connector, but this is not a Mac-only feature. PC towers and even hi-fi accessories could sometimes have this option with their power supplies. The Power Mac G4 has 2 physical security features. You can physically lock the side panel door just like with the G5 or the Mac Pro, and at the bottom, you also have a Kensington lock. The G4 itself looks fantastic. It's dust-free for the first time in who knows how long, so let's go ahead and start reassembly here because we got to get this system up and running. RAM shortages of DDR5 or even DDR4 RAM don't affect me because right now we're using PC 133. Now, I haven't tried out the cards themselves, but they are all cleaned up. They're looking a lot better, and I will reinstall them because that's how they were inside the Mac. Just like the logic board within the Mac, all of the expansion cards were pretty much coated with a layer of dust. As you can see though, it's looking a lot better. This is the Belkin F5U 503 3-port FireWire expansion card. Next up we have the D-Link Ethernet card, model number DFE 530TX Plus. And from what I can see, it's not a gigabit compatible card, it's just 10100, but it's still cool to have an extra Ethernet port regardless. On both of the video cards, the side with the heatsink was basically dust-free, meanwhile this side was just coated with dust. And this one is actually the Radeon 7000 Mac Edition with 32 megabytes of RAM. The AGP card also cleaned up really nicely, and based on the part number, this is the ATI Rage 128 Pro. So right alongside the upgraded GPU, we're going to reinstall the factory card because, well, it's just cool to have 2 GPUs in a Mac system like this. The last thing we also need to reinstall are the hard drive trays because, well, even though we don't have a hard drive at the moment, these have been cleaned up, so it's ready to go back in just as if it's a brand new system. With everything cleaned up and back in its proper spot, now we can actually do the fun part of installing macOS. Even with the existing upgrades that the Power Mac has, we still have a lot of potential because, well, first of all, hard drive, but we also have some free available RAM slots which are not doing anything. Granted, 1 gigabyte of RAM is still really nice to have, but this can go up to 2 gigabytes. Also, can't forget about a potential airport card in the future. Last but not least, we still need to install the bezel here. And if you have your own Power Mac G4, you want to be very careful with this because it is, of course, an older plastic component. So you just have to very carefully align this And the Power Mac now actually looks like a Power Mac again. Whenever you close a Power Mac G4 door like this, you could just snap it into place, but because it does of course have plastic components, I'd rather just close it manually without the risk of damaging anything, and as you can see, it's able to close up without a problem. Now when you talk about the specifications of both of these Dell Optiplex machines, they are both newer and faster compared to the Power Mac, but that doesn't matter because this can natively run macOS 8, 9, and 10. As for the hard drive situation, we're going to be using our external Seagate hard drive, which has been featured many times before on the channel. I've used it for various different projects, and for today's video, it's going to be the main hard drive for the Power Mac. Now, it does support USB, but more importantly, it supports FireWire. You can even daisy chain other FireWire devices with this because, well, it's an awesome standard. So with the hard drive connected up to the Power Mac here, we're going to start off by using the AGP graphics card because, well, it is the AGP Power Mac after all. So far we just have the flashing question mark because obviously nothing is installed on the hard drive yet, but with the CD drive spinning up, we have a Happy Mac. Now that is super awesome to see. We even have the fancy CD background because it's obviously on a CD. This is so awesome. I've never really used the older versions of macOS until now. Now with macOS 10, I'm just used to seeing macOS Extended journaled, but here we just have the option between macOS Standard and macOS Extended. Now, I don't know the difference between these two, so I'm just going to go with Extended because, well, Extended journaled is the journaled version of Extended. Yeah, that probably isn't the best way to describe it, but for now, we're just going to set it up like this. And ideally, I would like to repartition the drive, but you know what? Let's just go ahead and continue. So, Macintosh HD. I've always seen these options here, but I know it's not exactly the same. Does this close it? Yes, it does. That closes the window. This makes it so it matches the icons, and that closes it, but not completely. This is really cool. So, do we want to check out late breaking news before you install? This document tells you how to prepare for installing macOS 9.2 and gives compatibility information and basic troubleshooting. So, we don't have anything installed, and this is... Okay, so macOS 9.2 supports macOS 10 compatible computers. You can install this version of macOS 9.2 on any of the following: Power Mac G4, Power Macintosh G3, PowerBook G4, PowerBook G3, except the original PowerBook G3, iMac, and iBook. Yeah, back when it was just called iMac and there weren't any other models. Everything about this is just amazing. Welcome to the macOS 9.2.2 installation program. Now, I know there's other versions of macOS 9, obviously the release version 9.0, there's like 9.0.4, 9.1, 9.2. Now, I don't really know too much about classic macOS, and I figured that the latest release here, 9.2.2, would be a nice version to start out with. Now, I know I could try macOS 8 as well, but I know even less about macOS 8. So we're going to start off with this. This program will guide you through the 4 steps necessary to install macOS 9.2.2. So select the destination disk, read important information, respond to the software license agreement, and of course, install software. I mean, just look at this guy. He's so happy. Welcome. It's just like with Windows XP. It's awesome. So let's go ahead and continue with this. So we got to choose the destination disk here, obviously Macintosh HD. Perform a clean install, installs new system folder that does not include third-party extensions, control panel. Yeah, there's actually like extensions is a thing in macOS 9. There's like the control strip down here. Now, it's probably not going to be the only macOS install that I do on this Power Mac because, well, eventually it would be nice to have a proper hard drive within the Mac itself. But for now, just to actually try out macOS 9 in the first place, we're just going to do a standard install here before you install. And actually, we saw this within the folder. If you are upgrading from macOS 8.1, some third-party programs that extend or add features to the macOS may be incompatible with macOS 9.2. Examples include programs that change the way menus work, change how files are stored, or alter the way you work with files in the Finder. Really, the only thing I know about macOS 8, apart from the fact that it obviously still has the classic macOS design language, is the box for the software itself. So with this, we can continue. Oh, and there's this guy too, where he's telling you like an important event or whatever's going on with the system. So of course, macOS 9.2.2 is a recommended install. Airport would be nice to have. Internet access, Apple remote access, personal web sharing, text-to-speech, macOS runtime for Java, color sync, network assistant client. You know what? Sure. You can even create installation reports. That's pretty cool. And with that, we can begin the install. And it's only going to take 11 minutes. I mean, we're only using the fastest technology available, a Power Mac, optical media, and FireWire. The installation process has finished. Click Quit to leave this program or click Continue to install other software. The really cool thing about this is that it's basically a live boot disk. Like, this is technically macOS right now. It's on the CD, but in theory, we should have macOS 9 now. So it's not exactly the same because you can't do everything on the CD here, but it is still really cool regardless. I have also connected up Ethernet to the Mac itself. Internet Explorer cannot load the Microsoft Internet shared libraries. Whoa, that's awesome. Would you like to set up your computer to use the internet? You know what, I think we're just gonna have to reboot and go into the actual macOS install here. But if we go into About This Computer, macOS 9.2, built-in memory 1 GB, so it does detect both of the RAM sticks. So I guess, yeah, we go into the special menu here. I will restart the system and remove the CD. So the system itself kind of just restarted on its own, I guess. We had a cursor for a second. I might actually have to go back into that README folder because clearly something is not going as intended. Okay, so within the Apple menu here, there is control panels, and here we can select a startup disk. Now, I might need to select this. Not exactly sure how this works, but I'm guessing that should be selected. Okay, so long story short, I can't get this to work. Now, whether it be the hard drive, the macOS installer, or the Power Mac itself, for some reason it just doesn't want to boot into macOS 9. Now, obviously, it clearly does boot with the CD installer, and it is installing onto the hard drive, but once we get to the point of restarting the system and actually loading into the install, it just doesn't. Now, there's too many variables here where I really don't know what's happening because I don't have another FireWire drive to test this out with. I don't have a free available IDE drive to install inside the Power Mac. And even if I do make another macOS 9 installer, that doesn't tell me what's wrong with this one because clearly it does work. Clearly it does install on this system. But something else is going wrong, and for now we're just going to wrap this up because I've already spent a lot of time on troubleshooting this. Did you know you can bless the system folder? Yeah, apparently that's a thing within macOS 9. So clearly I'm going to have to do even more research, get more components for the system itself, because as awesome as FireWire is, it really is nice to have a built-in IDE capable drive. But to end off today's video, instead of leaving it just as is with a flashing question mark folder, what we're going to do is we're going to take the G5 over here, boot it up into target disk mode, and actually use the hard drive from the G5 on the G4 as if we had macOS 10.3 installed on this system to at least try out the Mac itself instead of just this. So with the power of FireWire, we can start up the G4 again. and I'm holding down Option so we can start up into, select the hard drive itself. Now, I have noticed that this Samsung display does take a little bit longer than other monitors to show up with an image, but it's still completely normal. And just like that, any moment it will show up. And there it is, 10.3 Panther. Now, I've been doing some other hard drive things with the G5, and in fact, I'm still not done with it, so we only have 10.3 to choose from right now. So let's go ahead and boot up macOS 10. And just like that, it's as if it had a hard drive the entire time. So it is the same Panther install, but now it's on a G4. So even though it says G5, that's just because the user account is G5. There we have our 450 megahertz PowerPC G4 chip, and of course, 1 gigabyte of RAM. So within System Profiler here, we have our memory, which actually shows up as PC133. Now, I thought this was a PC100 only system, but it shows up as PC133. It's also really cool to see both PCI and AGP here within macOS 10. So the Ethernet controller does show up, as well as FireWire. So both of the cards are properly detected, as well as both of the GPUs. So here we have the Rage 128 Pro with a whopping 16 megabytes of VRAM. That's how you know it's a real gaming powerhouse. And as for the PCI card, it has 32 megabytes of RAM, as the sticker indicated earlier. So it's awesome to see that both of these do show up, and again, 16 megabytes of RAM, yet it's able to display the Aqua interface without a problem. As for the ATA bus, we do have the DVD-ROM drive and the ZIP100 drive, but obviously no hard drive. SCSI itself is even more empty because, well, there's nothing SCSI connected up to the Power Mac. For USB though, we do have the wireless mouse and of course the Dell USB keyboard, which actually shows up with the name itself. Pretty cool to see. FireWire, we of course have the FireWire disk because, target disk mode. Now it does have the option for an airport card, but as we saw earlier, it doesn't have one installed at the moment. And that's basically it for the specifications. We know that the PCI cards are actually detected within macOS, which is awesome to see. And to wrap up today's video, let's try out iTunes with a CD. Now with older versions of iTunes, you can still use it perfectly fine offline, and even with iPods that support those versions of iTunes. Now there is a way to fix internet radio with old versions of iTunes, but you need to patch it separately, or basically just get a patched version of iTunes. However, as long as you still have an internet connection, old iTunes can access the CD database. So as you can see, we have Pilgrim by Eric Clapton, and this is, I believe, iTunes 4? Yeah, iTunes 4.5 from 2004. Yet it's still able to easily access it without a problem. And we have the audio coming directly from the Power Mac because the Power Mac has a built-in speaker. Now, is it high fidelity? Probably not the best speaker to listen to, like if it's your only speaker, but it's still really nice to have one built in regardless. And if you want to watch another PowerPC Mac video, then why not check out the video where we made this on the Power Mac G5. As you can see, it's an awesome Bee Gees CD mix, and if we put this in the Power Mac G4, nice! Now this is how the Macintosh was meant to be used. Multimedia and the internet. Check it out. Power Mac G4. macOS 9, your internet co-pilot. The Power Mac G4 is quite simply the fastest machine ever designed to run graphics applications like Adobe Photoshop, InDesign, and Quark Express. It draws its phenomenal power from the PowerPC G4 with Velocity Engine. Computers get marginally faster every year. Megahertz, a popular but simplistic measure of performance, usually increases around 35% annually. But once or twice in a decade, we experience a breakthrough that leaps far beyond these incremental steps. Today, we present such a breakthrough. The new Power Mac G4. This is not just the fastest Mac in history, it's the fastest personal computer in history. Can you imagine looking at this back in the day, on your brand new Power Mac G4. Now this is how the future was meant to be. And what do you know, there's our cinema display right here. All we need now is a classic airport base station like this. We do of course have a G4 processor now, at least a desktop one. The Apple Store offers convenient online ordering 24 hours a day. If you enjoyed today's video, then consider leaving a thumbs up. And if you want to see even more awesome content about Power Macs, old macOS, and of course, old technology being used all the time, then consider subscribing. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.